Does this sound okay? Can you hear me? Can y'all hear me okay?
Can everybody hear me okay? Can you hear me okay? Okay, it's 6 o'clock, time to start our meeting. And let's all rise and we'll say Pledge of Allegiance. First off, we have established here tonight a quorum. Rick is Zooming with us. So we will have Rick on the Zoom tonight. We're here tonight to look at the 2021 budget. It's a hearing for the budget that we will be discussing. And the community manager, Charlie, has brought to us the proposed budget many months ago or a month or so ago, and we, as a board, have worked on it. And we've looked at it. It was put into the communique for residents to look at. And tonight we have a PowerPoint presentation that Jim Adams has put together, which is a very good PowerPoint presentation. I think that all the residents will appreciate being able to go through and look at. So it will be something that everyone will be able to look at. At the conclusion of the presentation, we'll have a period of questions. We have some questions that were sent in. We'll be responding to. We also have something referred back to the meeting for Monday night when we have a regular meeting. And we'll start with the presentation, and then we'll go from there to Jim.
Okay, thank you, Sam. If you could give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay, good. And I think the way it's set up is, well, it depends on your screen. Can everyone else see the PowerPoint with a picture of the front gate? Okay, good. Sam mentioned it earlier, but I want to mention it again. Thanks to Jim Adams for compiling this, put it together. I think he's added a lot of detail. This is probably version 17.5 or something, right? It's gone back and forth numerous times, so there's been a lot of work put into it. So let's jump in. And I'm going to have to move around my bar here because it's obscuring part of my slide here. So hang on a second. Okay, this is probably the one of the more important slides here and gives the overview. And I think it's important. This board has worked diligently over about the last 100 days, believe it or not. When we first started looking at this, to a 0% increase on a number of different categories. So, and this also is noted that this will be in effect, the 0% increase will be in effect for the next 18 months. We are transitioning from a fiscal year to a calendar year. So starting July 1st, when these fees go into effect, we'll run a 6-month. We'll do an audit at that point in time, and then we'll run a 12-month on the calendar year and do another audit at that point in time. So these will be in effect for an 18-month period. O&M, we're holding the line on, and I'll get into some detail on that. CARF the same way at 2438. O&M's 192.12 per month per lot. CARF is 2438. ARF is staying the same at 3925, and we'll get into more detail with these later on. The bridge was approved by the members almost 4 years ago. It's $3.92 for those that didn't do the lump sum payment. And then the Lake Management Reserve Fund was voted on by the members back during the February timeframe, and that committee is working diligently to refine their plan, which we'll share some of the details with you to implement that to positively impact our lake for the future. Garbage is actually going up 24 cents. My mistake, the numbers that were put in the communique were actually higher than this. So this is good news. It's actually less money per month than before, but it's going up 24 cents to $16.59. So, and you can see the overall total fees are going to be $288.76 per month. What may be different for you is if you have an undeveloped, a vacant lot, you're not charged garbage, or if you did your lump sum payment on the bridge, you wouldn't have that as well. But if you were fairly normal here, the vast majority of the houses out here, this is the base charges that they'll get. The overall amount is 4.61. So even with the member voted on Lake Management Reserve Fund, it fell underneath the 5%. Okay, and that's what we just talked about, the 5% limit on those. Okay, and then ARF is limited plus or minus 3%. Here's looking backwards for the last 5 years, and you can see that 16-17 was $249.38, went up slightly to $255.10, then up 266.26, went up about $10 last year, and then this year is the $12.50 for the Lake Management Reserve Fund. Okay. Just a little bit of a breakdown. The O&M is the operations and maintenance. That's how we pay the POA employees out here. That's how we maintain the golf course, maintain a large portion of the roads out of O&M and do that. So that's really the day-to-day type things to keep the gates open and operating. CARF is the Capital Asset Requisition Fund. It's essentially a saving account for acquisition of capital assets or refurbishment of existing. Once again, Jim Adams will go into this in more detail later on and how each one is determined. And he's got a great breakdown on that explains it well. Asset Replacement Reserve Fund. This has been in place for a number of years. It's a very important reserve fund for us. Allows us to have the assets and the tools, the equipment, the vehicles we need to do our jobs here. It's a saving account. We're replacing assets owned by the POA. And then Clark will talk about that later on, how it's tracked and the fees determined. Once again, I mentioned the bridge. This was approved by members. The fund started in 2017 and will be paid off and towards the end of 2021 or definitely by February 2022. So it's coming now to an end. The reason that's a little bit uncertain is we've also sold some additional lots into this. So there's a little bit of additional money coming in there. Lake Management Reserve Fund, it was approved by the members during the February election, and funds will be used for refurbishment, maintenance of the lake, as well as streams on POA property and that come into feed Lake Kiowa. And I'll have some more details on that. In garbage, the fees necessary to pay for garbage collection. And also this includes the 52 times a week, 52 times a year that they pick up. Also the 2+ cleanups we do. And I say 2+, we're going to have at least 3 cleanups this year. Who knows, there could be a 4th if we've got another storm event. So then this the total overall fees. This is forecasting out over the whole 18-month period. So this is a monthly number times the number of lots times 18 months. And you see the size of the budget we're talking about. Once again, to repeat, no increase in the monthly assessment on O&M. This is a deficit budget, which means that the expenses that we are budgeting are higher than the O&M revenue that's coming in, but we're utilizing the surplus funds that were generated in fiscal year 18 and 19. The members voted for that to be utilized, and we're going to utilize that to take care of the O&M. What is contemplated in here is a 1% salary increase over that 18-month period for our employees. And our Human Resource Committee also recommended that we do a 1% 401k match for all eligible employees. Our employee participation and contributions in the 401k is rather low, and we'd like to motivate and stimulate and make people aware of that. We did have to be, or I did have to be tight on several categories. I think everybody remembers when we first rolled out this budget, we didn't quite know exactly what the next 100 days were going to look like. So as those 100 days unfolded, we tightened things up and went back and forth. Some of the areas that I did tighten up is tree trimming, in food and beverage costs. I tightened that up, and we have seen some improvements in that area, which is great, and that will help us achieve this. I will say this is probably the most uncertainty in the future that of any budget that I've put together. with who knows, it's the longest one with an 18-month duration, and then who knows what the next 3, 6, 12, 18 months is going to look like. But I'm confident that we'll be able to achieve it at the end of that time period. Okay, what I'd like to do now is turn it over to Jim Adams, and he's going to do the CARF bit. And Jim and Clark, if you would tell me when you'd like the slide advanced, then I could advance the slide for you.
First, just a bit of test. Can you hear me okay? And Charlie, if I kind of wave my finger at you, that's what I mean by switch. So thanks, Charlie, for handing it over to me. And what I wanted to do is take everyone through what we call the Capital Asset Requisition Fund and what composes that fund. Sure. So I'll go into a little more detail on each of these, but there are 4 components that make up the Capital Asset Fund. That includes a facilities replacement and refurbishment, which is $3 of the 2438 is for those purposes, and I'll go into a little more detail. There's a dam spillway reserve in the amount of $2.10. erosion control and silt prevention in the amount of $2.25 and $16.03 related to capital projects, which I'll talk about a little more also. All right. Facilities replacement and refurbishment is $3.15. And Charlie, if you just go ahead and catch me up to the next slide. What facilities items are, there's some things like in our facilities, such as the lodge where we are now, or the golf shop, or the office. There's things like heating and AC, windows, paint, flooring, those kinds of things that may not last as long as the actual facility, which is a capital asset. So several years ago, the board chose to start building some funds and savings to allow for those things to be replaced without having a big hit at any one time. So the POA maintains a spreadsheet list of all of these facility items that is on a plan to be replaced. That's not part of the asset list that Clark will talk to you about in a little bit longer. We maintain the cost of those items, the expected life of those items, inflation factors, and basically determine the replacement time and cost into the future for those items. And so that essentially defines the facilities replacement piece of the CARF. Yes. Well, this and again, this just gives an example of the spreadsheet that the POA maintains, and it shows in this particular tab of the spreadsheet shows that each facility item that is broken down by department, what asset it's related to, and the category it's in. Again, you can see the when it was last updated, its expected life, and its estimated value. This spreadsheet projects many years into the future and allows us on the board and the POA to project the amount of money that should be expended each year on these items. And thus we figure out the fee that I mentioned previously. Charlie. Dam spillway reserve. This funding actually started this current fiscal year and is a result of, well, it's an amount of 210, which is slightly lower than it has been. And Charlie, if you advance to the next slide. And I really want to start out by saying this is a result of state regulators coming in and saying our hazard rating has changed because of increased development downstream. So what that really means is there's nothing wrong with our dam. It's very safe. It's functioning as it was intended to function and built originally. But we've Texas, or the TCEQ, which is the agency that has given us this suggestion that we need, because of this rating, we need to increase the width of our spillway. So what the previous board decided to do was hire an engineering firm, and they contracted with an engineering firm to start a study to hopefully show that the TCEQ's suggestion is without merit, or maybe we can do some different things. So the alternative to, or if we don't get that, it could be a very expensive project down the road, because we'd have to go back and do some things to increase the width of the spillway, which could get expensive and would probably result in the special assessment. But right now, this funding should allow us to hopefully prevent that from happening. Erosion control is at $2.25. And Charlie, I'll get some detail on that on the next slide. Oh, maybe I didn't. Maybe it's just something pretty self-explanatory. But the erosion control is and silt prevention is funds that the board we had actually started collecting some of that in the past, and we're going to roll that money into the future for preventing erosion into the lake and helping on the lake management, but also doing additional things to help silt prevention into the lake. So that's what that's funding is for. Next. And finally, the category of capital projects, which is an amount of 1653. And we can go to the next slide and I'll start covering some detail. So the reason why I'm slated with covering this whole section is I work with the Long Range Planning Committee, and the Long Range Planning Committee really drives the capital assets priorities that come before the board. And I just wanted to quickly review how those priorities are set. In 2019 was our last survey, and the Long Range Committee worked on what that survey would ask and the kinds of areas to set and prioritize. The Long Range Committee then reviewed the results of the survey and reviewed that information with all the other committees. They used their discussions with other members in the community, and we came together and we, on the Long Range Planning Committee, set the priorities that rolled into this budget year. And the committee knew going in that the board has ultimate control of those priorities and the budgeting, but they set the initial plan. So coming out of 2019 to where we are today, this is the list of the top 10 priorities, and just I want to say that the top 3 of these, and maybe number 5 to some degree, are going to be addressed by this budget. And I'll show that a little more detail on the next slide. But basically the top 10 is guardhouse, golf cart bridges improvement, which is already in progress and under evaluation, what we're doing is how it's working. The East Gate updates, which is essentially redoing the whole East Gate function and lanes. And then number 4 on the list is a fitness center or workout room, which is not contemplated in this budget. There are some additional park improvements contemplated in this budget, which maybe fits number 5. Other items for the future consideration are expand the driving range, phase 4 of the lodge, which would be refurbished exterior, bridges over low water crossing 1 and/or 2, and pro shop, patio updates, and then just general golf course improvements. As the committee has come together more recently and earlier in the year, some other ideas have started to emerge, which would be like sports fields, baseball or softball or any kind of sporting fields. And those would possibly be related to any plans we have for the acreage that POA owns. Another idea that was more specific related to golf course improvements is golf course drainage. As many people know, number 9 and maybe number 12 sometimes can have really bad drainage in the winter when we get lots of rain, and so they often get closed for a number of days. So that might be an area we want to continue to look at in the future. Again, there's always ideas to improve our parks and our walkways, and so those continue to need to be looked at. The Long Range Planning Committee is also working real closely with the Land Committee to try to develop more specific long-range plans related to the acreage. And another one of the areas that might be related to acreage would be additional RV storage or trailer storage, because it's been kind of tight over on the trailer storage area for it's over by the dam now. And that would be additional possible income. All right, just restating these plans or those projects one more time and actually showing some dollar amounts. I want to very much caution that any dollar amounts listed on this page are very much estimates. The first 5 or 6 that are in this budget or show a 2020, 2021 budget, I would say are reasonably close estimates with that, and the budget is built around those numbers. But anything beyond that are just guesses at this point. Any years that are associated with a project beyond this are our guesses at this point also. So I do want to point out again, the spillway project with the engineering firm is underway and will be continued in this budget. A guardhouse is contemplating in this budget. The gate access system for both the east gate and the new guard house area or new gate front gate area. The east gate access is part of this, and cart bridges. There's also some parks and beach improvement money that was related to capital assets, and the Parks Committee will prioritize those kinds of things throughout this next budget cycle and help the board decide where we should spend that money. So that's it. And then I'm just allow everybody to take a quick look at the other projects down below. Those are just, if you have input on any of those projects or have a passion for them, please contact me or anybody on the Long Range Planning Committee. They would love to hear your input, and we'll take your ideas as we go forward in planning. I do want to point out that I colored the one on low water crossing #1 and #2 red, just to remind me to make a statement about it. That you can see that's a relatively large number. The committee and the board knows that in order for us to build a bridge over #2, it'd be quite an expanse and it'd be quite expensive project. So that would likely turn into some kind of special assessment vote of the entire member community before another bridge is built. So just wanted to make that note to everybody. I think that covers it, and I'll turn it over to Clark.
Can you hear me now? Great, thank you. I want to give you all a little bit of information about the Asset Replacement Reserve Fund. Go to the next. In there it's a very extensive list of all the equipment that we have, all the vehicles, some buildings that have equipment within them. Roads are in there. We have some golf course assets that are there, the replacement of the greens in a future year, replacement of fairways and tee boxes, and anything in excess of about $1,500. The POA maintains this spreadsheet, a list of all items on there, and these items are replaced in the years where their remaining economic life may have been set in prior years. Every month, the contribution is made to each of these assets, and there is a listing of every year and the expenses that may be deducted or expensed in that year to replace those assets. And it goes out about 15 years. We'll look at a quick example of that here in a moment. Within that list, there's cells of computations that help us maintain cost, expected life of those assets, and inflation factors that are used each year to update that particular cost. So in the future, when that asset is due to be replaced, there is sufficient funds to replace that asset at that time. And this schedule that I spoke of defines all the fees amount in each year such that that may feed the budget, so we know that the assessment that you're paying on the Asset Replacement Reserve Fund is sufficient to cover those expenses in that year and in the future years. Next slide, please. This is an example of one of the pages of the Asset Replacement Reserve Fund. Maybe going to be 3 pages here as we move through this. As you can see, we're talking about furniture, we're talking about tractors, we're talking about lawnmowers, we're talking about carpets, grease traps, septic systems in some situations, HVAC units, seawalls. You see a seawall there. We're looking at that right now to modify that one. And as you can see there, they scheduled those items all the way out into those years. That's gotten kind of fuzzy there. I can't, is it with y'all too? If you see a red a red cell in a year, that means that that particular asset, a certain amount was going to be spent in that year on that asset, and that asset did not require that amount. So that asset stopped accruing from the monthly dues, however, continues to accrue on the inflation factor or the CPI that is fed into the system and into the formula. Go ahead and go to the next screen, Charlie, and let's see if that improves this, this fuzziness we have. There we go. As you can see that one in Public Works, they have air compressors, they have the pontoon boat. They've got some carts, Kubotas. You'll see that what those cost in the year that they're due to be replaced. You can see that chemical disposal equipment did not get done in 19 and 20. So that amount moved to 20 and 20 to the next 6 months of this year, 20. You'll also see there's an equipment, there's a trencher and an access skid steer that did not get replaced in 19 and 20. And I believe what we did with that is we put that particular piece of equipment to rest at that point and moved to a different piece of equipment with those funds, because I think we bought something bigger in this last year, is I believe what we did. So there is a multitude of assets that we have. This particular list is huge, and we review this list every year. And there's a committee called the Ways and Means Committee that has been established. And that Ways and Means Committee reviews this list every year, and every asset that the POA has purchased in that year to make sure this list is on schedule. So not only is the board looking at this list and our treasury is looking at this list, the Ways and Means Committee is looking at this list as well. And we go through the Ways and Means Committee to help decipher and set up the inflation factors, or CPI. As we know that at the end of the year, that is computed by the government, and we know what that rate should be. Hopefully that explains that. There is no increase in the asset report in the ARF schedule, which is a 3% schedule. And that is because we think we're looking at the expenses for this year and the next 2 or 3 years beyond that. And we think that is a sufficient amount of money. That's not saying that next year, looking 2 and 3 years out from there, that there may need to be an increase in the ARF schedule. That's just saying that over the next 18 months and 2 or 3 years thereafter, we feel very confident at the number that we're at. Thank you.
Okay. Rick Walker, can you hear me? Give me a thumbs up. Okay, great. Okay, this is the bridge fee, and just a little short explanation here. Oops. It was a vote, special assessment vote passed by the members in 2016, right about a $300,000 overall investment. We actually built it for a little bit less than that, which was fantastic. We got a unbelievably great deal from one of our former members here, Tommy Ford, put in a lot of effort to it. Great project. It really helps every time low water crossing number 2 is closed, and people up that are between number 2 and number 3 in years past, there's been many times that they've been flooded in. Well, now they have the ability to go out, and it seems to be functioning quite well. It was $3.92. It is $3.92 a month. It began in began in 2017, and it should end by February 2022. Lake Management Reserve Fund. Once again, this was voted in by our members back in February. $12.50 fee per lot begins with the July 1st, 2020 bill. So all members will see this on their next bill. The present work that's being done by the committee is they've contacted engineering firms and dredging companies. They're really in the fact finding and getting information mode at this point. They're really the first projects that they're looking at is cleaning out the silt retention ponds, and low water crossing number 2 would be first. I think 3 would be second, somewhere down the road, and then going into number 1. Prioritizing drainage projects to reduce silt inflow into the lake. So once again, if we can, keep it from coming in, that's all the better than having to take it out once it's here. The future, continue to build the funds. Build a master dredging plan that would be a 10-year plus plan. And that involves getting permits from the Corps of Engineers and the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. Their plan is to dredge the first cove in Q4 of 2022. So once again, this fund is going to have to accumulate funds to get enough funds in it to be able to go out and do a good sized dredging project. This fund does not contemplate dredging the entire lake at any one point in time, in any short duration. It will be smaller projects around the lake. All right, that's all I have, and I think now it's going to be turned over to Sam Samuel, and Sam is going to talk about the questions that were submitted.
Thank you, Charlie. I'd like to just thank Jim and Clark and Charlie for a real good presentation. I think it was something that everybody can understand and know where we're coming from and where we're going. So as far as questions, we had questions that were turned in. We had asked, I think, in the communique and also the online site to submit questions, particularly about the budget. And that was what we were interested in getting questions on. We received questions, however, some of them were not on the budget. And we had I think a couple of them that had to do with the how the pricing in the food and drink at the lodge, how we come about with it. Those particular questions will be referred and looked at our meeting on Monday night. So we will have those questions will be there and we will have answers for those. And we also had another question concerning security, monitoring the lake as far as the operations of the boats, et cetera. That also will be referred to the board meeting for next Monday night. However, we did have 3 questions and that we did want to get to. One of the questions that we had from Gerald Smith, lot 1419, he says, I'm interested in hearing about any new planned projects being planned for the next fiscal year. And I think that Jim Adams' presentation pretty much covered the projects. I don't know, Jim, do you have anything you might like to add?
Not really. I was just to say hi, Gerald, and I think that's a good question, and other people may be asking similar. Just to we can go back and hit on it, but the key projects in this budget are going to be the guardhouse, golf cart bridges, which has already started in this current fiscal period, and I've seen great improvement on the bridge that goes over 1613 area. Then the other 2 bridges are planned to have similar surfacing done in this next budget cycle, but at a time when maybe when they can close the golf course or for a day right after another green punch or something, because it might take 2 days to do that. But then the other topic or the other key projects will be East Gate and park improvements. So should cover it.
Okay, thank you very much, Jim. The other question came in from Dan Bush, lot 1662. His question was, why are trash fees going up when service has been cut back? This service needs to be bid out. And Charlie's going to respond to that particular question.
Okay, we actually did bid out the garbage service several years ago. We really didn't have any qualified other bidders willing to bid on the service at time. Luckily, our current provider came back at very close price to what they had before, so that was good. We have had several people that expressed somewhat interest, but they haven't followed through and come through it. But what we did do is I went and looked at it and compared. I know there's an apples to oranges comparison, but I looked at Gainesville's program, and we're very, very close to Gainesville in terms of services and fees. So that's kind of a reference point to look at. Interestingly enough, they're not taking out less garbage. They're taking out at least the same amount, if not more garbage. I think what is different is their COVID-19 guidelines. Like everyone else, they have had to put in protocols to protect the health and safety of their workers. And that's the garbage being has to be put in bins, or it has to be in an intact plastic bag. And once again, that's not too dissimilar from what I found in other places. And that's what the requirements are as well. They will pick up, if you put brush in plastic bags, then they will pick it up. I know for a fact they've done that at my house. I do think also that probably the amount of garbage has increased due to the amount of weekenders that we have up here, and they're doing garbage. And also there's been big vegetative growth due to the rain we've had over the last couple of years, and there's lots of trimming going on. The spring cleanup we had was a typical size for a spring cleanup. And then the special dumpsters we had 2 weeks ago due to the windstorm, we took out almost the equivalent of a spring cleanup with the amount of dumpsters. So there's a lot of items that are continuing to waste that's continued to be generated. I will continue to meet with the company and see where they're at with their COVID-19 and what they'll do different. If you do the math on it, it works out to $3.83 a week, which to me sounds like a pretty darn good value. And that does include weekly pickup of a one bin and up to 10 bags. And it does also include the 2+ annual cleanups. And I say 2+, the last couple of years, we've ended up doing at least 3. And if we get a major storm event this year, we'll most likely do a 4th. So we'll do that as we go. So that's the situation there.
Okay, another question by Dan Bush, lot 1662, was we continue to be told POA staff that no funds are available for drainage and erosion issues. Please don't try to drive the budget for zero increase and not invest in the infrastructure needs. And Charlie's going to answer this question.
So when Jim Adams went through the CARF breakdown, and I pull that back up on the screen, you see that for erosion control, silt prevention, $2.25 are allocated per month. That gives almost $60,000 over that 18-month period. We do also have some line items in the ARF schedule for drainage fixtures and also the O&M. And we've used all of that this year on projects. So I think it is something that we have formalized our POA record keeping of it. And we've got, I think, about 9 or 10 potential drainage issues to look at. Some of them may be POA responsibility. Some of them may be strictly homeowners' responsibility, and some may, fall between and be, a combination of the two. So I think that's something to, we do have money there. And I think it's something that we will obviously work through. There's a couple of small ones we were trying to work on right now, and it looks like it's going to dry out enough for us to be able to accomplish those, because it's been so darn wet, we haven't been able to get in some. But I think there is money there. We've probably got in the neighborhood of almost $90,000 or $100,000 across the universe to do it. We've got to make sure we invest that money wisely.
Okay, thank you, Charlie. I don't believe we have anyone here at the lodge for questions, and I hope that the residents have listened and enjoyed and participated and got something out of the presentation that we made here tonight. I know the board members are available if you have questions, and also don't forget the Monday night regular board meeting, 6 o'clock, and we will be Zooming it or YouTubing. So be sure you watch, and so you can stay up to date as to the things that are going on out here at Lake Kiowa. At this time, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. Clark. and seconded by Steve. Everybody in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Motion passed. I'll say the meeting is adjourned.
All right. Good job, Sam. Thank you all, everybody. Thought that went real well.
Okay, watch your comments so everybody's shut down. Okay. Make sure everybody's mute, shut down your computer.